Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cross Commission podcast. My name is Saif Fakadu. On the other line with me is Jake Nazar. Jake, Happy New Year, kid. Good to be on the mic first time for 2025. How are you, man?
I'm good, Safe. First snow of the new year. It is cold. We're talking college lacrosse. It feels like the old days. Kind of, it's starting to feel like we're throwing it back to like 2009. Feels like we should, be complaining about like the shot clock or something. You're like, when are we gonna, Quint, when are we gonna get a shot clock in college lacrosse?
The evergreen topics, of course. I did like seeing all the schools put up, pictures of like their fields all snowy and some of the stands. I was like, yeah, that really is a sign the season's around the corner. Snow on the ground. NFL playoffs just start to begin. I was like, yeah, we're gonna have games in a couple of weeks.
Indeed, it is. It is a. God, it feels weird to like. Unseasonably doesn't feel like the right word because it's winter, but it is. I can't remember the last time it's been like this cold. Like every now and again, the last couple of years in winter, as we like to say, they'll throw us a 40-degree day, and they ain't throwing us a 40-degree day in a minute. I'll be curious, what it looks like, we got 4 Saturdays. No, three. Yeah, 4 Saturdays. I mean, 3 more. So 4 Saturdays from now. What it's going to look like when these teams face off for the first time in 2025. Because it's definitely been a chipper winter so far. We got some schedules today. Maryland and Syracuse checked in right on time, January 7th. Which LIU as well, which leaves us at I think we have just maybe 6 teams that don't have schedules out for 2025. Yale is not out yet with their schedule. Towson is not yet out with their schedule. Towson, of course, is one team that we will be discussing on the pod. Stony Brook not yet out with the schedule. Did I mention Notre Dame?
Not yet.
But no, Notre Dame's not out yet. I believe Mount St. Mary's. Just scanning through and doing like one last check here to confirm before I go through the Mount. No schedule, and I think Bobby Moe also no schedule. So yeah, we're almost everybody has dropped at this point. As we said, you can pretty much all piece it together by this point. Maryland's is basically the same as last year. They swapped Brown for Delaware. That will be a home date March 8th. Safe. The TV overlords have
spoken.
They've taken our sacred day from us. And Maryland Johns Hopkins is being played on a Friday night.
Look at that. I mean, that's a big call. That came from Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I just, what?
I'm thinking that Maryland day where you guys hosted Hopkins. You remember that?
I think that's the week after. What's Maryland Day this year? Maryland Day this year is March. Or what's what we got? Yeah, that Maryland Day is that's the week after.
Oh no, I was just thinking of numbers. I just remember that last time thinking of a big packed night game at Maryland for Maryland Hop. The atmosphere was electric. I mean,
yeah, no, you don't. Look, it'll be a good crowd. Like I don't, I think could they maybe turn out the students Friday night? If you do some promoting, try and really push it out. Do kind of like hustling on campus, like could you turn out the students? I think so. It's maybe could maybe Hopkins maybe get the students to go down, some of their students maybe go down, maybe create a decent atmosphere, but Friday night it's not going to be what it would be compared to a Saturday. Like listen, man, traffic into College Park, on a right? 7 o'clock. I think it's 7, but but either way, like it's I mean, look, I mean, it's this thing's I mean, in the grand, the long arc of how they play this, it's not as bad as like when they played at M&T Bank. I would say, like I mean, I'm not, I'm sure for the players that was super cool. I'm not like, I would still think it's better to play it on. It's better to play it on campus. We were there at the game this past year. Game itself at times, left some left some things to be desired, but the experience is second to none. And so yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it's if they can get a heck of a crowd in there on a Friday night, that's pretty much says everything about the game, and the attraction that the game has. If they can pull a heck of a crowd on a Friday night, I hope so. And so. But yeah, seeing that was a little bit, I wonder if they change it though. Well, no, it's a little late. Because I remember a couple years ago, it was first announced as like a Sunday, and then they switched it back.
So Saturday.
And then it was kind of like someone made a call. It was like no, like. So I wonder if they might like but at this point, and I think they literally said it was like, what was Hopkins' tweet? Sorry,
I don't remember.
The way they worded it. I found it. Oh, it just says a little update. Jays will play at Maryland on Friday, April 18th at 8 p.m. Doesn't say. I thought it said something about TV, So I don't know. 8 p.m. also is what it says. So that's a little more time to get, down there. That's all it says. Just Jays will play Maryland on Friday, April 18th at 8 p.m. I don't know. Maybe. Now, they've played, that Friday has been a TV slot the last couple of years with BTN. So, my assumption, I mean, like, and that's a new time slot, for the game, because ever since they've played that game, they've played that game the same time, Saturday at 7 or 8, since the last 10 years at Maryland. But let's
maybe they're trying to crack like a top 200 list for rating, because I'm thinking like, what's the worst night for TV? Is usually Friday night.
I don't know. I don't. Yeah,
maybe
I'm not sure.
Like the lack of competition. I don't know. I mean,
yeah. I don't. Is there, what else is BTN airing on Friday? In April. I don't know if it's is there something with like other sports,
baseball, softball, wrestling, maybe, but
yeah. What's the no, because Quint does the wrestling is like late March, isn't it? I always remember because that's like when Quint is like off the like ESPN for like a week, for like a weekend. That's like I think late March.
Definitely right. Softball for sure. Conference.
Yeah.
Baseball. I do like how Jays are incorporating the NAG J. I've been calling for a little. I didn't know if it was like a royalty issue, like maybe they couldn't figure out the right percentage to give Mr. Gower, Neil. I think it's Gower, but the actual cartoonist. But yeah, once I started seeing it on like some of the tweets, I was like, finally, this is a moneymaker. This little cartoon bird like should be on like t-shirts everywhere. Like I'd buy like at least 2 when I get down there. One for money.
You've been on this for a while.
I mean, it seems like a slam dunk. It's just like this thing is a lovable bird. I know some people like the more aggressive bird, but it's just like the kids love it. Just
it's a good logo.
T-shirts everywhere. Just like same thing. I say this all the time. I'm a little bit off tangent, but that Lucy the elephant thing. I think I've probably mentioned it in the chat with you and Ryan. There's like a former hotel that's like a 3-story, literally like elephant in Margate, New Jersey. It's called Lucy. It's just like I think it borderline like maybe not national landmark, but it is like classified landmark. There was like 3. There was one in New York, one in Miami, one in Margate. The other 2 like got destroyed, but the Margate one still stands. But I'm just always it was like Lucy should just be everywhere. It's like T-shirts, like bumper stickers, like it's easy. And you're starting to see it now. They're merchandising it a lot more. I mean, I don't want to be a crass capitalist too much, but I was like, yeah, the Jays are just leaving money on the table without like using this the NAG J. I was just like, this is awesome. But yeah, it's all more on the gloves. They did that little video. I was like, all right. I was going to try to be like, all right, now bring the cannon back too. Like I do everything I want.
The cannon. Oh man. So yeah, we'll see with the Hopkins Maryland deal. Syracuse dropped their schedule. Syracuse always does the home away, so it like I can never like get up it's disorienting. I'm trying to go by like date and time here. So Syracuse has pardon me. I think we just said they're starting the season with Jacksonville. And that will be in the Dome, the JMA, Comcast, Radio Shack, whatever we call it now, Dome, February 1st. Then they got Vermont, February 7th on a Friday. They play Towson on a Monday. That's got just weird vibes all over it. Maryland, College Park, February 15th. They play Harvard, February 22nd. Utah, March 1st in Salt Lake City. They play Hopkins, March 9th in the Dome. I guess no construction going on that weekend. I'll say. They play Manhattan, March 18th on a Tuesday. Colgate, March 22nd. Virginia, March 29th is the first ACC game. They play Notre Dame April 5th. Cornell April 12th on a Saturday. Cornell on a Saturday? When's the last time they played Cornell on a weekend? That feels weird. Ryan, man, we gotta tell Ryan about this. Let's see if we can, come on and let him,
he's got to be there at the island.
It's in his backyard. Yeah. So I'm gonna tell Ryan right now if he wants to come on and complain about Cuse and Cornell being on a Saturday, he is welcome to. All right. Then they got Duke and North Carolina, and then ACC tournament, so on and so forth. All right. And I think that's about it. Yeah.
Duke, do you want to talk that real quick?
Yes.
The game.
Duke not playing Loyola, which obviously is a prominent non-conference game, not I guess known as like a rivalry, but it was Duke's longest non-conference opponent that they had played, and they had played Loyola every season since 2000. And it was a game that, had considering there's been a lot of just, weird, circumstances that have kind of gone on over the last, 25 years. They've been on, there's been times where they've been on, and seasons have, been canceled or it's been off, and they've still wound up playing. Loyola and Duke first scheduled each other in 2000, at least in this as when this series has occurred. Before that, the game was played in 2006, even before Duke's season was canceled. The game was played in 2020, even before the season was obviously, seasons were shut down. The game was not scheduled in 2021. But as we know, the teams still wound up playing each other in the NCAA tournament. And so one way or another, Duke and Loyola wound up playing each other every year for like 25 straight years. Mm-hmm. And so the Greyhounds were the Blue Devils' longest consecutive non-conference opponent. And so a pretty, significant game on the calendar. And they've played, they've played some, obviously they might play, I think they played more, but they played 2 NCAA tournament games, that are infamous. The 2013 game where, Charlie Toomey calls timeout as Loyola's going down to win the game in overtime. That if it, doesn't happen, does Duke go on to win back-to-back titles? Who knows? And then in 2021, Loyola, the last Loyola team to make the NCAA tournament, that was, the last team in the tournament, that was kind of scrambling to get in with a couple weeks left in the season. Of course, had their conference championship game canceled because of COVID. Gets in, beat Denver out in Colorado, and was facing obviously that famous Duke team with Sowers and O'Neal and all them. Took the lead late. Duke tied it up, and then I think O'Neal won it overtime. That was a crazy game. So, and then they've played some pretty big regular season games as well, where both teams are in the top 5. So it certainly caught my eye. When I saw that one wasn't on the the calendar. I don't think it'll be as it's not the most as noteworthy as game being dropped off as we've had in other recent years. Syracuse, Cornell was one I think has kind of dropped off a couple different times. Hopkins said like maybe ones that not happened, but certainly Syracuse Hobart this year is one that we saw isn't happening, but pretty noteworthy game to be not off the schedule. It appears that Duke replaced them with Michigan, and also appears that Duke replaced High Point with Air Force. So those are the 2 swaps that the Blue Devils have made to their schedule.
Yeah, I think probably a combination of maybe scheduling conflicts. I think that's always what we always hear from coaches, just finding the right dates for both teams. But also a little bit of still like a good context when they play each other. But like even a couple of the games between the two, like Duke's kind of taking it to Loyola a little bit, looking at the series. They're definitely more than about like 4 or 5 1-goal games that could tip the scale. So Duke has 17 overall wins to 5 losses to Loyola, but that's like 4 or 5 like 1-goal or overtime wins over the Hounds that may make that a little bit closer. I mean, Loyola got that 2022 game in Baltimore, but Duke's essentially won 6 out of the last 7 or 7 of the last 8 if you go back to 2017, and pretty handedly for the most part. Like I said, there was that overtime game in the playoffs in 2021, but aside from the loss in 2022, Duke's kind of won by at least 3 or 4 for a majority of the game. So maybe that also came into play. To maybe Duke just wasn't able to find a schedule for them, and maybe they thought maybe it's not that big of a it's a little bit of a loss. Loyola should be a good team, but what we've seen after the last 3 or 4 years, it hasn't been to the level that I think most Hounds fans and alums would expect. And oh my God, we got Ryan. Good to join.
Yes, you caught me at a time where I literally have about 2 or 3 minutes. So I guess you want me to rip on the orange schedule.
Ryan, I think your audio is also safe. You're frozen.
I'm frozen. Oh.
Yeah, I have a different mic on this time.
Ryan, you're
Let me fire up the good one then. I said, kind of just doing this at the edge of my seat.
I'll give you a couple seconds. All right, Ryan is coming on to for like literally 2 minutes. He's gonna yell about Syracuse and Cornell rescheduling their traditional Tuesday dates so they can play in his backyard. He was completely unaware of this, as I am currently the only face you see on your screen. If we eventually wind up uploading this to YouTube, if we do not eventually wind up uploading this to YouTube, then, and you just wind up listening to this on the audio feed, you are just listening to me talk to you.
And we're back.
Filling air for like
you're a great vamper, Jake. Don't
Now I'm good.
All right, Ryan's good.
I
Here we go.
I actually had to put on my mic. You guys are making me work for this 2-minute walk.
I've already ranted about the Syracuse Cornell game.
Well, you didn't have to come on. I was just like, I was telling you if you wanted to.
Yeah. So just real quick. I mean that I've already made my case clear that Syracuse Cornell on a Saturday and neutral site is a travesty, et cetera, et cetera. But otherwise, I mean, a very, very competitive schedule for Syracuse this year. I mean, really, maybe like there's not typically a Syracuse schedule will have a couple, cupcakes dotted here and there, but every game on this schedule looks competitive when you think about it. Jacksonville's been good in the A-Sun. Vermont's been towards the top of the America East recently. Jake, you know all about Towson and how they are in the what are they calling it now? The Coastal Athletic. As you guys are going to be talking about a little later. Harvard might be a spoiler in the Ivy League race this year with how they've been growing. Manhattan, the Jaspers have put together some NCAA tournament teams, and the Colgate game is always interesting too as a local rivalry. And the road trip out to Utah is going to be kind of fun to watch as well, a little bit out of the ordinary. So I think, very, from time to time we have a Syracuse schedule where they got a team where we kind of scratch our heads. Why are they playing them? This is just a blatant way to boost their goal differential. But I think, they got a lot of good tests on this schedule. So it's going to be nice and competitive. And I think that's going to bode well for getting themselves tournament ready this year. Obviously, RPI is not going to be any issue with a schedule like this. And, you're going to, you got your usual Syracuse Dome slate, but you also, you're heading to Maryland, heading to Virginia, heading to Duke for some good road tests as well. So
heading to Utah. With respect to the Orange going all the way to Salt Lake. I saw that. I was like, won't play Hopkins in Baltimore. They'll fly all the way to Utah.
Hey, now the Charlotte money, both teams had to agree on that Charlotte money coming in.
Listen, Milliman's hands are, got a little blood on that too. So don't worry.
Look, Johns Hopkins forced Princeton to play in Baltimore for a decade straight with that face-off classic. So Hopkins is the last program to talk about making teams continuously play at home.
Nobody plays. I think Maryland might be the only team that plays Princeton in February.
Come up to Jersey. Can't wait to see Coach Tails.
I guess you guys touched about Maryland, but I mean that Cuse Princeton Virginia stretch for Maryland's going to be really fun to watch. That 3-week stretch for the Terps. Speaking of schedules that came out today. And also, I guess Notre Dame is really, really a blue blood now because they're waiting and they're releasing their schedule even later than Maryland and Syracuse are, and it's January 7th.
Notre Dame wasn't. You'll get Notre Dame's schedule when they tell you. Show up to the field.
Yes, but I'm saying they're taking after Syracuse and Maryland. They're a true blue blood now.
It's just Corrigan will send you the call. He'll just call you and you ready to play? You got your gear?
It's I called the coach. Don't worry about it. We're playing.
Yeah. But Jake, interesting week. Same week, Towson and Maryland. Towson on a Monday and Maryland on a Monday. Saturday. Monday night lax.
Monday night. That's interesting. Towson doesn't have a schedule yet, I guess I can go do the. Let me try and see if I can. Yeah, see if I.
But otherwise, before I hop off real quick for this quick hitter, I mean, gonna be a fun Syracuse schedule. A couple of fresh faces with Jacksonville finally getting Galloway's homecoming at the Dome, getting Towson on the schedule, Harvard on the schedule, Utah on the schedule.
Are they retiring his jersey?
I don't know if they're doing any jersey retirements this year. They should, but
that's feels like that's a prerequisite with
But I know some people are a little upset that the Army game is not on it. But I mean, 2 years ago, Army. What was it? Yeah, 2 years ago, Army wasn't on the schedule either. And as a Syracuse fan, that game always gives me agita. So I'm not exactly weeping the loss of Army. I know neutral fans will think otherwise, but for me, you could take that 9-8 excruciating early season lacrosse game off of me. I'm fine with that. But yeah, otherwise it's going to be a fun season, I think. I mean, they could have stuck to tradition and played Cornell on a Tuesday night, but alas, both programs want to get their Long Island recruits, so it is what it is.
Towson is. I don't see anything for Towson. It looks like I don't think they got a game that before then. So, I mean, they play Hopkins. It looks like they play Hopkins on a Tuesday, February 4th, and then they play Cuse on a Monday, February 10th. Beasts. So, yeah, so they don't have a game that like weekend before it.
All right. On that note, I'll let you guys finish up the scheduling news and enjoy the rest of the preview. Looking forward to listening.
Thanks, Ryan.
By the way, because you guys are talking CAA, question for you guys. Is this the year Hofstra actually does anything, whether that means NCAA tournament, maybe do the thing, if you know what I mean?
Well, you'll have to stay tuned for the rest of the podcast to find out.
I guess I'll definly be listening.
I'm a seasoned professional. Right? I'm doing this too long. I'll give that away for
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the show, guys.
See you later.
All right.
All right. Let's dive into it again. I think we've gone through everything. I guess last bit, Safe, you mentioned it. Though, we will knock on wood as we say this because we got to get through there's two spooky dates, it feels like, with it's like the first Monday, Tuesday of the new year, and it's like 11 o'clock on the first Saturday, where it's like there's just massive injury dumps news.
Oh yeah.
You'll get like either like that first Monday, it's just like breaking. Like the following like 10 players all have torn ACLs. Or it'll be that first Saturday, where it's like the following players are not playing due to like this guy's not Grant Ament is out with an undisclosed injury. What's the injury? How long is he out? Undisclosed.
Day to day.
Is he gonna be back next week? Undisclosed. So like it seems like we made it through. No injuries reported, but that doesn't. We got to get through. Check back in February 1st at like 11 o'clock and see. We'll see how. I mean, look, there will be injuries. I mean, it just happens. It's the way. But it was nice. I guess. Just not. We're given here like kind of made like major just significant injuries. All right, let's get after it. We are looking at the A10. We're looking at the Big East. We're looking at the CAA, and we're looking at the Patriot. Safe storylines, questions, big, overarching, 10,000 foot view. What's catching your eye with these leagues or teams from these leagues as we go into 2025?
My big one for A10, kind of a topic we've talked about these teams individually, but now that they've all are one conference, I feel maybe it's a conference question as well. That next step, team that makes a win in the postseason and gets to maybe Elite Eight and dare to dream, historic Final Four run, because we've had teams outside of the Big Two, and you can throw an Ivy in there, the Big Three, make Final Fours, over the last 15, 20 years. It hasn't been as frequent as, kind of was in the, mid-aughts, but I think if you so accurately noted, like, this is kind of going to be, the first post-COVID, post-super team era. The transfer shuffling still, has one more wave, with your two boys coming in from Yale next year. But, this is kind of like the last big, off season of transfer. Like, so kind of like a settling back to 2019, kind of, with NIL and everything. So there's a lot of things that are so different, but like more normal, like kind of lacrosse seasons that we've had pre-COVID. So with that, I was saying, is like, if the super team dynamic kind of, like, as you noted, like goes down a little bit and teams can just like improve a little bit, like that may be the difference for, a St. Joe's or a Richmond to, get that first round win. And like I said, once you make an Elite Eight, we've always said, that's the money round. It's kind of the stakes are even higher. But, if you get there, who knows, just make it there. Delaware kind of got knocked on the door, after being Georgetown a couple, 3 seasons ago. So, once you're in there, who knows, a couple bounces the other way, maybe Delaware makes that Final Four run. But that's my kind of main storyline for the A10. I just think, I don't say this in like a condescending or patronizing way, but the A10 is kind of like a darling conference right now. Got some really dynamic teams. We love the fact that they're a tight 6-group unit. You can do things with that. Maybe get like 1 or 2 big non-conference wins, and improve the RPI as a whole for the conference. And it could be a time in the near future where maybe there are 2 teams for the A10. That's kind of maybe another storyline, maybe 2 of them getting into the tournament. But that's my main thing. If one of those 2, like, Richmond or St. Joe's, make it again, can they take that next step and, get that first round win and, kind of like really kind of showcase themselves on a national stage? They're like, hey, we've kind of heard of us tangentially, make these, kind of really tight, entertaining regular season games, but, on the national stage, get that first round win, make it to the first round to guarantee to not have to be a play-in game, but then, winning that first round game and actually getting, into the Elite Eight and possibly further. Is that of a storyline or something I'm really thinking about, for at least for the A10? That's my big one. Got a couple more for the other ones, but
no, I would say, I think in general, I was, so what's your kind of, if you had to look just overall, kind of what were you thinking? I mean, I think that's a fair, I think that kind of applies to all these leagues, really. I think that's a, I think that's a good, I think it's a good, summation.
The one other question or storyline with the Patriot League, it's like a little bit of luster. It's just like I think Loyola kind of not nosediving, but going down a little bit. It's like taking a little bit of that edge from being a national comp. Army, wonderful regular seasons. Just really did some great things, but not being able to capitalize and turn that into, like, last year was so disappointing. Almost Rutgers-esque from 2018, 2016. The year where they hit the number 1, 17. Those are 4 Big Ten teams being number 1 that year. Remember that? So we were in our heyday. But yeah, Rutgers hitting the number 1 team in the country, and then just like a slow descent into not making the tournament. Different circumstances for Army, kind of a little bit more snake bit, with a couple unfortunate conference losses that really sunk their chances for getting an at-large bid, given the great non-conference play they did last year. But yeah, just the Patriot League is like, I feel like they're kind of there, but like BU feels like just a notch down. Like when they play like an Ivy League team, we've kind of seen that in the last couple of years. Not really being able to showcase that, hey, yeah, that great start now tested against a like an Ivy team, like are able to pull off, some upsets. Navy never really kind of doing anything, under the Amplo era. Lehigh, I think they had a great season last year, and definitely a testament after losing their coach to go down to Virginia. But can they replicate it? It just feels like there's nothing dangerous about the Patriot League. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you look at maybe Army, just given what they did last year and the year before, making a tournament in 2023. They've shown like they do have substance there that can carry over into 2025. But I don't know if you're looking at the Patriot League, like, I don't think that there's anybody that's like scaring me at all. Like,
so I think the Patriot League is an interesting case study and I think they're going to be a good league to track, because this became a kind of thing we discussed a lot over the last couple of years was anytime it felt like there was a window or opportunity for if a with maybe one conference, a major conference, like look, for example, 2022 with the ACC. The ACC just, and look, leaving off, whatever else anyone wants to say about, that whole thing. When it began to feel clear that there was a window of opportunity because the ACC was not going to get the usual number of teams into the NCAA tournament that year, it was like, ooh, okay, this could be an opportunity for somebody else to get, into the mix here. And, instead of it being for a a league outside of, the big three, the Ivy League wound up getting 6 teams. Last year, I think you can kind of look at it. Now, Army, look, at the end of the day, Army just, they spit the bit. Like, you had to get the job done there, considering where they were at. But still, you kind of look at, the Ivy League, kind of, the last post 2022, having, a lot of teams just kind of feasting amongst each other. Is there an opportunity, elsewhere there for some of these other teams? It was the Big East who really, with Denver just, going out there and grabbing big time victories immediately. Early in the season. And, there was 2 ways of approaching that. It was these conferences missed opportunities. And it doesn't have to be either or, or you can kind of look at it and say, look, these leagues, the ACC and the Big Ten really just the ACC and the Big Ten, can backfill their rosters when attrition occurs and they lose players through the transfer portal in ways that other teams just cannot. And in addition, they can also just like top off the top of the roster with 5th-year grad students who are 23 years old. And, as we've seen with Notre Dame, for example, last couple of years, Liam Entenmann is, 5th year, tons of experience. As we saw, Brian Tevlin was there, Chris Fake,
yeah.
That was, transformational in some ways. Pat Cav, just continually just, throughout the roster. Maryland in 2022 with Donville, and, Keegan Khan and other guys, Duke brought in some, significant pieces. Obviously Sowers the first year. Hopkins bringing in Chase Earlin last year was a significant, piece. Tons of teams have done it. Like everyone, in these conferences, some ways. These are just ones that are coming right off the top of my head. Syracuse with the Princeton guys last year. The Patriot League can't really do this to the same degree. And so the way it looks is like, can the Patriot League really compete in this way with these in the same way?
That's the existential question.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to make it like that dire, but it's like I feel if someone who's taken their milkshake is the Ivies refocus on lacrosse. Like for a little while, it was just Princeton or Cornell or maybe them at the same time, but it wasn't conference wide. Like, yeah, we're taking this for real.
Well, and so it's like, and the Ivy League can't top off the roster either. But what the Ivy League can do, and also it's a little different is now what before in 5, 6, 7 years, how did these schools, how did they zag when everyone else zigged? It's like, well, there was, early recruiting, this is one theory, is like, a lot of schools went in on early recruiting. And so it's like, it left different guys for, like Loyola is a good example. There are a lot of guys, guys who were kind of like left, kind of behind by like early recruiting, who by the time, got to their junior and senior year, were the best players in their class, but, then they could go in, and hadn't gotten offers because Johns Hopkins and North Carolina, but their classes were filled up. Pat Spencer is a famous example of this. Or as you mentioned, the Ivy League post, the Ivy League in, you exactly said it, early 2010s, like post Bill Tierney leaving, Princeton's in a weird kind of spot. Cornell, post, with, Tambroni leaving and then DeLuca with that, kind of time period. Cornell's in a really weird sort of spot there. Yale with Shea, a good program that accelerated and took a leap. And so it went from, the Ivy League went from being a good league that felt more the Ivy League was a league of really good teams that was, good league, good teams with, and obviously a lot to offer, with obviously academic league institutions, elite institutions, but a lot of programs in flux, like that was kind of like the Ivy League was falling back to the Patriot League in some ways. Then Princeton figured, got his shit together with Madeline, and like climbed back up to, everybody else, and is now, as we've seen, Princeton's now recruiting at an elite level that Army and Lehigh and, are not going to recruit at. Cornell, when Milliman obviously, was there, and now has continued with Busick, recruiting at a different level. Yale with Shea, obviously, are recruiting at a different sort of level. So they've, kind of scaled up to a degree. And it's, left the Patriot League in a, the weird sort of, it felt like there were probably more, it felt like there were more spots, if there were, or more players maybe to, kind of acquire, it didn't feel as fixed, I think is probably, because, those programs were, look, Princeton and Cornell, Princeton went how many years missing the tournament, Cornell was, kind of in, and look, obviously, yes, they still had good recruiting class and stuff, but if Princeton and Cornell are in the mix, I mean, that's a different ballgame especially in that area of the country.
That's exactly it. Some kids who may have gone to a Patriot League team like 5, 7, maybe probably like 7, 8 years ago. Like now, if there's a chance to get a great education and potentially win a national title, like I don't know the recruiting that well to see how many players were on the Patriot League radar that got sniped by the Ivy League. But if you think of a conference that has commitment to academics, somewhat similar to the Ivy with the good amount, certain schools with prestige and history, and even with the service academies as well. Like, if they were taking lacrosse seriously, yeah, they may be able to get those type of like maybe not ACC, Ivy type, Big Ten type players, but you Chris Gray, those kind of players that make Chris Gray now, like maybe he is recruited by Brown, instead of BU, and then goes into an Ivy League or Dartmouth, with their resurgence, getting a new coach, and what I'm saying, like it's more of that institutional will, and if they're now like maybe a potential destination for kids who may have gone to a Patriot League team, like it kind of feels like it's Patriot League's in a really weird area where they may even fall a little bit below the mid-major. I mean, I could see a situation where they're like maybe right above CAA in this group here. You know what I'm saying? Like, but with potentially A10 jumping them, and I think the Big East, I would say, is pretty, above the Patriot League. Even if you can say it's top heavy with Georgetown and Denver. At least, Georgetown and Denver not Georgetown, but Denver's made a Final Four. They just made it last year. So like, people with the postseason success, Georgetown hasn't got to the Final Four, but they got in, won a first round game, which is more than you can say for a good amount of the Patriot League teams. I'm trying to think aside from Loyola, can you think of in 2021 any other Patriot League team that won a first round game?
Last Patriot League team to win a first round game.
Army. That's bad.
Army,
yeah.
Army. Lehigh, kind of, they made it a couple times with Cassis. Navy in 2016.
Yeah. All right. So, but almost have to go a decade. Army and the two other.
I mean, they've had runs certainly. Here's a good, I would just kind of, way of looking at this. In 2015, I go back 10 years. Look, these things are flawed. I'm not saying this is like the absolute best way of looking at this, but I understand like the opposing point. This is the top 20 recruiting classes by Inside Lacrosse in 2015. The top 10 were 1 through 10: Johns Hopkins, North Carolina, Virginia, Penn, Yale, Duke, Maryland, Syracuse, Denver, Notre Dame. So, I mean, the kind of like ones you would expect. We have 2 Ivy League teams in there, Penn and Yale. Then we go Ohio State, Penn State, Georgetown, Loyola. This was the Pat Spencer class. This is Jake Stover. Harvard, High Point. Cornell is 17th. Army is 18th. Lehigh is 19th. Villanova is 20th. So you have 2 Ivy League teams in there, obviously very strong. But Cornell's 17th, Army's 18th, Lehigh's 19th, Loyola's 14th. Like, that's pretty wedged in there, together. Nowhere to be found is Princeton. If I just do the 2016, IL, the 2016 top 100, freshman rankings. Princeton that year, and I think that might have been that would have been a coaching change year. Now, granted, they kept Madeline, so
I was gonna say, yeah, he finished the season off.
It does, there is continuity in terms of keeping the guy on staff who does, recruit the bulk of that, staff. There is 2 Princeton players in this top.
We were on the ground floor of the Madeline. As like it's history, please know.
The beautiful thing of is of having like a multiple person platform is that like when one of us isn't in, the other is. So like we're always
somebody's right.
We play both sides. It's like I wasn't quite there, but you were. So it's we always just go back and be like, boom.
It's like that Wahlberg and Denzel Washington, the buddy cop movie where they're back to back, like 2 guns. Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
2 guns. Yeah. Loyola that year, for comparison, had Ryan McNulty, who was a fantastic player for them, and had
on this team?
What's up?
Was my son on this recruiting class?
Lindley? No. No, I think it would have been a little later. Because when Lindley graduated, 20.
Oh yeah, he
2.
I think it was
his freshman year was
more.
When was his? He was a freshman
more but past last year, and then I think he got that extra year with the COVID.
Yeah, Loyola got 3. For instance, so like, it was a different, and I'm not even necessarily saying there's a big overlap in, and this Cornell class, by the way, is the Jeff T class. He was the number 1 player in the country. But the overall class is not, quite what they would have, put together later on. And if if we, just look at the, rank, today, or the last, few classes, Princeton had the number 1 class in the country just a few years ago. The one I think it was, the Nate Kabiri, group. So yeah, it's significantly changed, for these schools. And it's, and I think we had questions, dealing with this. And I think we had a couple. One from Michael at Mike Johnson _2. He asked, which we can kind of dive into this one we'll dive into this one a little later, but asked if the 2026 and future version of the A10, this one adds Delaware, be a stronger conference in the Big East. And then second from our friend Mark Hart, he asked, which team from these mid-level type conferences has put together the best talent and schedule combo to break the near absolute ACC Big Ten Ivy hegemony at the top on the 8 at-large bids? So who's got the best chance to get an at-large bid? And he said the boring answer, of course, is Denver and Georgetown. But be adventurous. And I think it gets this kind of gets into that conversation. Is like you said, existential feels kind of drastic. But like it's the fundamental question at play is, has a league like the Patriot League slipped over the last 4 to 5 years? These teams got worse, I think, and Loyola feels like the ultimate kind of like central point to this conversation because they were the big dog in the Patriot League. And in terms of like the Patriot League getting at-large bids, how did it usually happen? Well, you could always rely on Loyola to be good. and Loyola always played a brutally tough schedule. Look, Loyola 2 years ago beat Maryland and Hopkins, like back to back. So it was like, all right, well, Loyola beats Maryland and Hopkins, and like, all right, even if Loyola, like, boom, there you go, at-large bid wrapped up. So it's like Loyola would wrap up an at-large either way. So sometimes Loyola would get got, and we'd be in good shape. Like, unfortunately, that hasn't like that, and that was like 2023. That was a great example. It's like it felt like 2023. The Patriot League's gonna be back in the conversation for an at-large bid. Loyola's gonna be right there, and then it just kept just chipped away and chipped away as the season went along, and they lost all their margin of that. So yeah, is like Loyola, great example. Like, is this a program that's in real decline? I think there might be evidence to suggest that. The nature of how they, their seasons they've had seasons that have started really well and just kind of gone off the rails. They've had seasons, that have started very poorly that they've kind of turned back around, but there's been no real, consistency. It's not as if you can kind of like look at them and point to a clear, all right, you're just kind of struggling to beat, the top, echelon Big Ten ACC teams. There's been clear you can kind of point to sort of clear drop-offs and declines in the things that make Loyola great. Loyola, defensively is not what, Loyola, in the past has, been. The, riding, in the middle of the field clearing, Loyola doesn't feel like, what they've been in past years. So, a lot, I think you can, argue that, no, this is more than just a, COVID type deal. I think you, though, can argue like, look, it's been harder for them to get elite talent. It's been harder for them to, they still play a super, their schedule hadn't changed like this, they still play a brutally tough schedule. And, when you look at their schedule, going forward, they're going to play, they're playing Georgetown, like they go Georgetown, Maryland, Hopkins, Rutgers, like, there you go. Like, it's, it's still tough. It's a little, no Duke, so it gets a little easier in that regard. So, you can go both ways with it. And so it has the Patriot League, dropped off, or is it a league that's been just uniquely unfit to kind of fight the kind of, push back against the current that's, been, hitting of the last, 4 to 5 couple years. I don't know, or I think there's good arguments to make. It's somewhere in the middle, these teams have been like, one, Loyola has dropped off in some respects compared to where it was. Also, the Patriot League, isn't quite what it was. 2, you got a Navy that, in terms of where you would argue like resources, what recruiting, who can recruit the best kind of crowd players. Navy's probably the conference's second, that's the conference's, second best program in terms of ceiling, like what they can achieve is Navy. As you said, with under Amplo, hasn't quite, been able to really get over the hump. So if Loyola ain't firing and Navy ain't firing, that all of a sudden, yeah, you know, like you're really struggling to kind of like you're looking at Army, and then after that, yeah, like, you know, Lehigh, strong, good season, you know, BU, you know, Polly's done a great job with BU, but you know, the schedule that BU plays, to go to like Mark's question, you know, like, you know, schedule, BU doesn't play the schedule to, you know, like BU schedule. They play Siena, Yale, Brown, Air Force. They get Duke. You know, like BU doesn't have the schedule to really push for an at-large bid. That's not, you know, that's not there. Lehigh doesn't have.
I really like your point about like structurally, are they just not in a position to compete in today's? Because I'm just thinking of like, what do you think of like the kind of the biggest things right now in lacrosse? The transfers and
yes,
teams use it like I'm pretty sure non-injury redshirt and 50-year transfers are not allowed in the Patriot League.
Yep.
So you kind of have like, you know, at least one hand tied behind your back in terms of like what's the modern NCAA lacrosse now is, you know, people moving from one team to another using 50 years. NCAA may expand to just allowing people to have 50 years. So, you know, maybe not allow like a 6-year transfer, you know what I mean? If everything extends to, you know, to one more year, it's like, are they always just going to be like in a position where they can't take advantage of some of the features other schools have? The 9-team conference, like, again, as we always kind of say, like, just really hamstrings you from being able to schedule any like teams. The flexibility, like we kind of say, like, you know, I like how conferences do things that like are in their conference members' interest. Like, so whatever you want to say about the ACC, they're like, who cares about the rules? We're going to have our own conference tournament at the end. Big Ten is just like, you know what? We're going to allow everybody in the pool. Other conferences are making some changes. Ivy League having an Ivy League tournament, you know, that's a little bit older. But like, yeah, they're making changes that benefit their members, like in a tough environment. And, you know, that either get a 10th team and make 2 divisions, or like just, you know, do something with allowing them to like not have to play every single conference team, you know, on the schedule to just allow that flexibility. But again, it's just like they're just that lack of institutional will or for the conference, or nobody can agree on like the changes. But yeah, it just seemed like, you know, kind of like a, you know, an iPad, you know, an iPhone like 10, you know, in an iPhone whatever you know world. So
yeah, I think it's what you said with like the Big Ten's a great point. I remember, I think it was you're going to year 5 of the Big Ten, I think, with it. I think I asked after 2021, I was like, what do we think, you know, the Big Ten, you know, with like the letting everyone in, you know, I think, you know, it's like, you know, because it's like, you know, you kind of valuing the regular season versus, you know, more games, you know. I'm thinking back on it now, and I'm like, you know, like weighing the pros and cons, and I'm like, you know what the pro was? They got Michigan into the NCAA tournament twice. Or did they? I mean, they might have. I think, you know, did they qualify? Were they? I don't. What was their? You know, I don't know if they were 4th this past year. You know, in they might have been. I think they might have been 4th. You know, but the first year they weren't. And listen, you know, in terms of like, you know, just yeah, Michigan, Michigan was 2 and I think they were, you know, yeah, they would have got in this, you know, 2024, but 2023, yeah. And like, look, in terms, you know, just fundamentally changing, you know, lacrosse, you know, long term at Michigan, you know, they had to get into the NCAA tournament, you know, like just period, point blank. If, you know, that like, you know, if one more coaching change, you know, would have been really, really hard in terms of trying to sell, just sell another coaching change and trying to sell another, listen, in terms and boosters and just like people like, listen, just one more time, like that would have been, just, with like nothing to, show for it. If, in 5 years, if you got to do something, you can say, hey, look, we made the quarterfinals, like we're just one win away, that's a lot different from being like, we can, like, so, in terms of the Big Ten, like it's worth it, so I think that's a great, that's the question. Yeah, I think that, and I think that's the question. The Patriot League, I think, is emblematic of this, to a big degree. But I think it's a question facing a lot of schools in this kind of, in this sort of, batch of, I mean, not overall. I mean, like, because look, their goal isn't to compete with the Big Ten and ACC, but like for the health of the sport overall, I do think you don't necessarily want it to always be this part of it it did feel like when it went from Princeton and Hopkins and Virginia and Syracuse playing the Final Four every year to new schools being able to break through into the mix, and also that kind of coinciding with new schools adding lacrosse and everything else kind of in the late 2000s. I feel like, ooh, this is like kind of a these two things going together. I feel like that was kind of like a new age for the sport, and I do think kind of like it would feel, I think, like a step backwards if we now get just a return to the same sort of schools. And if it turns out that maybe that was just a case of like it was a period where like a certain number of like blue blood teams were just not very good, and I don't think that's the case. I think you had a period where a lot of these mid-major teams were really good. You had Albany and you had Loyola and you had Towson, and you had a certain where a lot of them were really good. Then you had a confluence of events that came together. You had UMass with Canela, like you had UMBC with Zim. You need that. Like you need teams with coaches, and you've had that change. And those coaches are still there, but it's also like things change in the sport. So you need a lot of things to come together. I think we would want it's not even necessarily parity, because that's such an overused word, but it's competitiveness, I think, is the right what is people want competition's good, like that's ultimately what drives. Look, why is the NFL at the end of the day what makes it it's event obviously it's event health. What makes it so strong good is there's always a degree of competitiveness, and why do people have been kind of dissatisfied to a degree with it this year? It hasn't felt as competitive, been a lot of blowouts. Games haven't been as good. So I think people want more, competitiveness, and I think they want some of these teams in this mix to be able to push on into that group. So I guess maybe we can dive into some of these questions. All right, how about we'll do this one. If the 26 and future version of the A10 we got St. Joe's, Delaware, Richmond, UMass, High Point, Hobart, and St. Bonaventure. So we take the current crop, we add Delaware to it, so it makes it a 7. So we have what we kind of like about it in the configuration. We add Delaware to that mix. in comparison to the Big East. Which is the stronger conference in your opinion? This question comes from Michael at Mike Johnson _2.
I would say it's close because this is what I think makes it a tough call, but Big East may still get it. I think the level of coaches, especially if DeLuca stays in with Delaware and they get, then you have, arguably three of the, non-ACC Big Ten coaches, and to an extent Ivy. But you could make a case that there are three of the top 15 coaches in Division One. And when you think of Chamati, DeLuca, and Ray, and you can maybe make a case that that could be enough to edge out the top heaviness of the Big East, because you're gonna make Delaware beat Georgetown, so it's just maybe it's not as much of a slam dunk, but just the last 5 years, Georgetown's had just such a string of success that they are kind of a glamour program, even though it hasn't translated into NCAA success. But they've and Denver, their resurgence and commitment, that institutional will that we always talk about, that's high at a school like Denver. I got nothing but faith in Providence and my boy Coach Benson. But they're still not on that level. St. John's needs a lot of work. Marquette at kind of flash in the pan a little bit with Amplo, but really hasn't kind of turned it back on. So there is a top heaviness to the Big East that adding Delaware to A10, you can maybe case top three, even I'm thinking of A10 I'm not ready to say yes for sure, but I see the mix there. If you add Delaware, High Point's kind of this wild card, maybe a potential non-ACC Southern team that could maybe do something. Then you have that added to it. So it's it feels like there's more meat in the A10, more substance to them from top to bottom, especially if you add in a Delaware than that the Big East doesn't have. But the Big East does also just have that potential, the name recognition, if a Providence or a Marquette could get turned around, then they would suddenly be a little bit more formidable conference top to bottom. But yeah, right now, from top to bottom, I think when you add Delaware, you can make a case that the A10 is better. But the elite, I think the Big East has that because of Denver's success and Georgetown's potential to be not a super team, but a national program in terms of the NCAA picture.
I think it is. So St. John's, Delaware, Richmond. I think it is. I don't know if close is the word. It's a conversation. I think is it's interesting. I think that's a testament to when you add Delaware in there, you have 3 top 20 programs, and that's look, how many conferences have 3 top 20 programs? They're
that's
after
not nothing.
Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd say they're probably they become one of the the ACC's got 5-ish. The Big Ten's got 6-ish. The Ivy's got 4-ish. The Big East has got 3-ish, and they've got 3-ish. So there you go. You've got 3 top 20 kind of, top 20-ish programs right there. That's pretty, and then you've got with UMass and High Point, you've got, they're in that next, kind of batch of teams. So you've got 5 groups, 5 of this 7 are, teams that you could reasonably say, all right, look, it's a good way of thinking about it is 5 of these 7 will have been in the NCAA tournament within the last, all since 2018. UMass made the NCAA tournament 2018. That's 5 have been in the NCAA tournament. That's strong. What I will say is ultimately I think gives the I still think gives the edge to the Big East. I think it's still pretty clear for the Big East. Is one, St. Bonaventure, until proven otherwise, I think this was just a scale up too big for them at this point in time. I think they were the MAC was their level. And maybe scaling to the CAA would have been a fit, but scaling to the A10 was one bridge to, and we'll see. Maybe they can, push them. But right now, as far as I think, they are in, they're not in the next tier with, UMass and, High Point. That's a, considerable drag in terms of, if we're talking RPI metrics, stuff like that. Additionally, I'm unsure on Hobart with the future right now. Hobart the last 2 years, if we're, talking Hobart, at different points with Greg Raymond's, tenure there, that was a good program. But the last couple of years have been tough. 9 wins the last 2 years. I'm not, there, you could argue with me that, Hobart is in that kind of mix with High Point UMass. In which case, if they are, then I think you could make this becomes, they might be, the conference comes, stronger, because then you could say if they're in that mix with UMass and High Point, then you could say 6 of the 7 could win the league really at any point. But I'm not really seeing. It doesn't look like Hobart futures really. I'm not seeing Hobart as a team that can win this league. In the near future. I'm not the outlook right now on the program. Is concerning to me. They lost. There was competitive games in there. Tight loss to UMass High, but they got demolished by Richmond. They lost by 5 to St. Joe's. They were not competitive with the upper echelon teams in the league. So that kind of concerns me a bit. And so ultimately, when I go with the Big East, is one just 2 top 10 teams outweighs 3 top 20 teams. Georgetown and Denver are quarterfinal, and Denver made a Final Four last year. So, and yes, Delaware did beat Georgetown. That's fair. But Georgetown is a kind of perennial, quarterfinal, sort of. They made it, 2 times in a row now. They were the 2 seed in 2022. So Georgetown's in the NCAA tournament every year. Denver, Final Four. Those are top 10 teams. That is and as we've seen, we see this. We talk about the tournament. The further you go up the mountain, the harder it is to breathe, man.
Yeah.
It's so. I think 2 top 10 teams is that's just it just makes you stronger than 3 top 20 teams. Like it's why look what makes the Big Ten to Big East. Denver, the Big East has 2 top 10 teams. The Big Ten probably has 3, I would say. But then the Big Ten has a top 5 team with Maryland. So there you go. The ACC probably has 2 right now with Notre Dame and Virginia. This is just where the scaling gets So, and additionally also with the Big East, we never talk about them, and I get it because in terms of sort of national relevance, they fail to make a imprint. But look, Villanova's really in the top 20 basically every year, and in terms of the strength of the conference, that does matter. Villanova always is, in terms of the strength of your conference, Villanova is always there to be a good win for you, if nothing. They're never a drag. I mean, they are a good, because I think that's the thing with the Big East. We always, it's we go, well, they got Denver and Georgetown, and then St. John's is really bad, which it is, and you kind of Marquette, Providence, and then we kind of skip over Villanova, because look, it does become kind of when it's the same thing every year, it becomes rather it's easy to kind of it's forgettable. I guess it feels maybe harsh, but it is ultimately sort of the same song. But look, they won 9 games in 2024. They won 10 games in 2023. They won 9 games in 2022. They won 7-5. That was the All Big East schedule in 2021. They won 8 games in 2019. They won 10 games in 2018. They did make the NCAA tournament that year. So that's 6 straight years with a winning season. Villanova is going to be a in the mix for at minimum a quality win on these team schedules, and that is good. That's if you're in the top 20, they all count the same, or they count more if you get top of it. The A10 is in the I think it's a good adding Delaware helps. Look, if this league was going to go to 7, it needs to be a team like Delaware at least. Another top 20. At least it's that. It couldn't have been you couldn't have added a team that was going to be a drag. It needed to be okay. We add another strong to the mix. I think the question for that is going to be can one of these teams scale up? Can one of these teams get to top 10-ish? I don't know. We'll see. And then the second question that we had comes from our good pal Mark Hart, which asks, which team from these mid-level type conferences has put together the best talent and schedule combo? So this is for this season, 2025, to break the near absolute ACC Big Ten Ivy hegemony at the top on the 8 at-large bids. The boring answer, of course, is still Denver and Georgetown, but be adventurous and pick someone else. So who's put together the best combination of talent and schedule to break up the kind of vice grip that the ACC, Big Ten, and Ivy have on the 8 at-large bids?
Well, I mean, schedule-wise, I think Richmond and St. Joe's probably, if we're not including the two Big East obvious answers, those are the. Sorry.
I will give you a third. There that I think. Richmond, yes, I'll give you a third that I think actually kind of beats St. Joe's. Maybe kind of decisively. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, St. Joe's has.
I got
St. Joe's right now, I mean, I don't know. I don't think Lax Ref has updated with Syracuse. He had St. Joe's 30th, Towson 36th. He had St. Joe's is playing Sacred Heart, then Duke, then Monmouth, Towson, Rutgers, Drexel, Villanova, Penn, Providence, and then they get into that. So they've got 9 out-of-conference games. And I would say 4-ish of those are top 20. Towson had, and how many? I mean, ACC, Big Ten, Ivy of those are 3. Towson has Hopkins, Syracuse, Navy, St. Joe's, UMBC, Virginia, and then they get Loyola later in the year as well on April 8th. I think if you've got
Virginia, Hopkins,
3 of Virginia, Hopkins, and Syracuse, that combo is, and then you got, I mean, look, the thing is with the schedule is like, it's going to be hard for these teams. Like they're going to have to do something that look like we sit here and we're like, oh, that's not going to happen. Like, it's like, look, Towson's probably going to have to win 2 of those games. So yes, like is the answer, like, are they going to do that? Probably not. But okay, what if they do? It's like, and I would say, if you beat 2 of Virginia, Hopkins, or Syracuse, I think, you might be sitting there.
I'm trying to think.
I mean, Loyola's always, you can never count that. Like, they start with Georgetown, Maryland, Hopkins, and Rutgers. Like that's always,
Right. That's a good point because, I mean, kind of it's funny because depending on how Towson is, that could be another kind of solid top 20 game in there. But yeah, really, if I'm being objective, Duke, Nova are really the only, maybe Towson as well probably is going to be in the preseason top 20 for some polls. Only like 3 really solid top 20 teams. Duke's the only potential top 5, top 10-ish team throughout the year. And if Towson's schedule replicates what it had last year, Hopkins could potentially fall off a little bit. I could maybe see like 10-ish outside top 10, but got Orange and both Oranges, Virginia and Syracuse. That's going to be pretty solidly like top 10, top 6 throughout the year for them. So yeah, Towson's got a killer schedule.
Richmond is always, I mean, we say it every year, like it's,
Richmond's earned this, This is what we always say. You gotta win these games or at least make a tournament that the schools like see it as like a, something worth their while. But yeah, I mean, I remember last year, Georgetown, Maryland, Duke. What was the fourth one? Virginia, right?
Cornell.
That's where they had a lot of bites at the apple at, kind of those premier wins that.
Here, I'll go. Here's our top. Here was our fall top 20. Richmond plays 5 of our top 10 in our fall top 20.
What you say? They got who was our top 5 again?
Notre Dame, Syracuse, Maryland, Cornell, Virginia. So they play 3. Like it's there. I mean, like they're like win. Like we gotta win the games.
Getting the opportunities or just getting the teams on your schedule is definitely half the battle, but the other half is winning. It's just been saying forever. Like we love Richmond, love what Chamati's doing, and they're so close.
If they win, who do they play at?
Robbins. They got Cornell.
I mean, we do this conversation with them every year, and like
they got Duke at home, and they got Cornell at home.
There you go. Win those 2 games. I mean, if you're asking like who's got the best, if you would ask me who's got the best schedule is always. If you're asking me, to answer Mark's question, like the component is the schedule. The schedule is the question. You need the wins. The wins are the component in the conversation. You need the wins. It's just that's got to be what's there. You got to have the wins. Richmond's got to be sitting here with lose to Maryland, beat Bobby Moe, lose to Virginia, beat Lehigh, beat Cornell, beat Mercyhurst, beat UMBC. We said, lose to Maryland, okay, 1-1. Beat Bobby Moe, beat Virginia, that's 1-2. Beat Lehigh, beat Cornell, beat Mercyhurst, beat UMBC, beat Duke. Lose to Georgetown, that's 6-3. Honestly, you might need to beat Georgetown, maybe, but that's 6-3. Beat St. Bonaventure, beat Hobart, beat High Point, beat UMass, beat St. Joe's, you're 10-3. 4 losses, but beat Duke and Cornell. That
may make you at large.
No, you're absolutely in the conversation. You're absolutely at minimum in the conversation.
No bad losses. Good.
You have
solid wins.
You have no bad losses. The only teams you lost to were because you're bad. Like you have lost to probably you lost to St. Joe's, like presumably your RPI will be in the top 20. You'll have lost to Maryland, Virginia, and Georgetown. You are in the conversation, and that's what that's what you're looking for. But yeah, if you ask, this component needs to be tilted far more towards schedule. I'll throw one out here who's not, and I'll say I don't think they're in it. I don't think they're in it, just because of the. And this is one part where I would be interested in a conversation. This is a larger form conversation about maybe the criteria. Utah's non-conference schedule is very strong.
Oh, yeah.
Utah plays Ohio State, Delaware, Denver, Vermont, Syracuse, Dartmouth, Marquette, and Virginia. That's really strong. And to me, that gets into a conversation of like Utah cannot control their conference schedule. Utah cannot control the fact that their conference opponents are going to drag down, the conference schedule, and like the RPI that is going to be dragged down by, the RPI component of like your opponent's, winning percentage in that part. That's not something they can control. What Utah can control is their non-conference schedule. And Utah's non-conference schedule has a, Big Ten team here in Ohio State who's, probably going to be flirting around the top 20, who made the NCAA tournament a couple years ago. They got Delaware in here, who's been a NCAA tournament team numerous times the last couple of years. They've got Denver, who made the Final Four last year. They got Vermont, who's been an NCAA tournament team the last couple of years. They got Syracuse, who was a quarterfinal team last year, who's going to be starting the year in the top 5. They got Dartmouth, who's an Ivy League team, who has been improving. Marquette, who's a Big East team. They got Virginia. Like that is a tough schedule. That is a tough non-conference schedule.
I'm gonna say it's a man schedule there.
So, like, Utah has a non-conference schedule that I would say if Utah was in the A10, I would tell you Utah has the schedule of a team. I would put Utah in this conversation. If Utah's in the Patriot League, now if Utah was in the Patriot League, they'd have to, like, cut out 3 of these games. But, like, and it's actually fun to see Utah, like, because of the A-Sun 6 leagues, Utah has actually been able to expand this schedule now.
Yeah,
and
it's the magic number.
Like, and so now look, at the end of the day for Utah, I still think, a lot of these teams are unfortunately going to take too much. I think it's going to take too much of a hit. I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like the A-Sun, it was better the last couple of years. The Utah, like they were still able to kind of like, peek around. But like the problem is that like one loss, I think is probably going to be too much of a detriment.
You can't. If you could do the high point thing, but just don't have an in-conference loss.
I think even the high point thing, I think is just too. I think here's what I'll say. I think a A-Sun champion Utah could be sniffing around the door of like, being, like, I don't know, maybe towards like 15th or 16th or something. If they like really like, if they pick up like a big win or two and they like just smoke through this schedule, like they, I think, they could maybe climb surprisingly high. But I think one lie is just going to kill them.
No.
And again, that's where I think gets to is like, why should, they be punished for like, they can't control that schedule. What they can control is their non-con, and they scheduled a really freaking hard schedule. And I think that's, that's a different question.
You can't lose to Queens. But if you lose to Jacksonville and I mean, the thing is, if they can get 2 out of 3 in that Ohio State Delaware,
it would have to be it'd have to be everything. I think they'd have to win everything, and that's like could you talk me into them beating you could talk me into them beating Ohio State. You could talk me into them beating Delaware, them beating Denver, like. I don't think they're beating Syracuse or Virginia. You could talk me at most. You could talk me to giving 3 of 5, and that's even then. I'm like, I think they'd have to win all of them. Like that's it's hard, man. We do this every year. Where like we try and get ourselves, and then at the end of the year, the math just doesn't add up. And again, like, look, if they were in the A10. If you put them in the A10 and you swap Air Force, Bellarmine, Jacksonville, Mercer, and Queens for High Point, Hobart, Richmond, St. Joe's, and, et cetera, I think it's a different conversation. Like, then I think we're like, okay, like, that's a little different. I don't think they have to win. I don't think they have to win all of them. Like, their margin for error, it's the Richmond conversation, It's like, all right, pick out, like, pick out 2 of them, maybe 3. Instead it's like, yeah, I think you probably have to win like, you have to be like 14-1 or something. Maybe it's 13 and basically it's like 13-2 has them like bubble out, 14-1 maybe is like last team out, or 14, maybe like 14-1, like maybe that's it, 13-2 would be like bubble out, 14-1 would be like maybe. That's what I would say.
No, definitely a good point.
All right, want to go pick some of these winners?
Definitely.
All right, let's do it. A10.
I went with St. Joe's last year. I think I'm going to stick with the Hawks.
Okay.
Because they potentially could be hosting the conference tournament. Not potentially, meaning if they get there, they will be hosting because it'll be in Philly.
It's gonna be in Philly. Interesting. Yeah. A lot of like, sort of like, shovels in the ground kind of guys for St. Joe's out the door. Levi Anderson, Carter Page, Matt Bomer, like just foundational guys. I mean, still key guys back. Levi Virch, Jesse Jason. He played really well in that game against Virginia in the tournament. He popped. And they, got to figure out. They got to be more consistent. I would say at the goalie spot. They were up and down there. A year ago, it's kind of my main sort of concern. I think they'll be strong again defensively. Ray always, kind of has things relatively locked down on that side of the ball. They were 25th last year in defensive efficiency. And they maximize their their production. They return a good amount, about 70% of their defensive starts. Again, they got Virch back, who's just a havoc machine. They managed really well the loss of Zach Cole. Now they lose Gavin Tye, but this is a team that they piecemeal like better than the sum of their parts. I think really like they find wherever the hole or weakness is, they find a way to like plug it.
Yes.
Like it's like the last 4 years, they have not been able to get saves. Like their goaltending has been a weakness for them ever since Adler left, really. Like they've not been able to, really, but like how have they been able to fill it? For a long time it was with Cole with the faceoffs. Like they've been able, they won a bunch of faceoffs and their defense didn't, and they protected their goalie. And then last year, the faceoff play fell back a bit, and so they really leaned on the offense, and the offense was fantastic. Now this year the offense stands to probably fall back a bit, so I think that their defense, which this was their last year's probably their strongest defensive year in a minute, I think will probably be what they lean on quite a bit. The question is, with losing Ty, who's their main faceoff guy, and the offense, are they maybe losing? Is it maybe like one too many holes to plug? Are you maybe just like, I think that's the question. Like their offense, I think their offense takes a step back because I think, I think it'll still be good. Like they always have talent. They always have talent there. But Anderson, Page, Bomer, Eccleston, like that's your top 4 guy. Like I'm sure they'll have guys. But with those two, they need to find one. They need to find a face-off. They need a they need to find a face-off guy, or they need to find like a goalie. In which case, like they can just become like a total lockdown unit on that defensive side of the ball. So that's my question with them. I think I'm gonna go with the Spiders. They return a strong amount of their production from last year. I mean, like a crap ton fact. So I also think there's, there's 37th, so they're not, super high. But reasonably high in defense, a lot back at the face-off dot. Also, I kind of, St. Joe's won this in 2022. Richmond, or was it? It was Richmond in. Hang on, who was it?
The first year was Richmond.
It was Richmond.
Last year.
Yes, yeah. And I don't know. I just kind of think, these two teams, these two are so kind of evenly matched. I just kind of think it's going to be, a bit of a back and forth, kind of trading haymakers a bit. I think that in a different instance with if St. Joe's losing what they lose compared to with Hobart, High Point, and UMass, I think they can stomach the losses compared with those teams. I think compared to Richmond, I think that's probably tougher because these two teams are just they're so tight compared, and they're so neck and neck. It's tight margins with these two.
I hear you. The only reason I obviously would have gone with Richmond is my second. It's just, I guess, my faith in Ray. We always talk about he's literally, not just reloading. He can just revamp everything after losing a lot. So that's pretty much Tamati. If it wasn't the fact that Ray was there and just his string of success, I just kind of have a little faith in it. But the Spiders would have been my clear choice. This could be a nice little Athens Sparta thing with those two, and then you add in Delaware in a couple seasons, then it could be really, really fun little period of time for the A10.
And St. Joe's got him, obviously got him twice a year ago, but that Richmond team was, they were putting up big wins. I mean, over some folks a year ago, and obviously they suffered some, tough L's to the big teams on their schedule. But the way that they were running through, their wins last year were by 16, 16, 9, 9, 12, 11, 13, 4, 2, 1. It was
they're putting a hurting on people.
Yeah, it was some significant, offensively you have to, do some, replace them, but defensively, when production coming back. So I think I'll probably lean in Richmond's direction. I would have to say that if I'm being, they also, they did a bit more they did a bit more in the portal. And I'll be honest, I don't really think there is a I don't know if there's a team that I kind of look at as being, I mean, like even like a dark horse. I don't know that I have, because, I mean, High Point was third in the league, but coaching change. I mean, we've seen is not a death sentence by any means, but some of the successful coaching changes we've seen have been internal lately.
Mm-hmm.
With continuity. They're obviously going outside, and I think Crawley can, like I like Crawley. I think he's certainly capable of, having a successful tenure at High Point. But that so at that point you're kind of looking at, UMass is having to replace a lot. So yeah, I honestly I really think it's these two again. Like I can't really. It's either hard pressed for me to really look beyond anybody else. High Point maybe is where I could maybe look. If I'm kind of looking towards anybody, like they were in the mix with they were the only one kind of in the mix with these two to a degree a year ago, but yeah, I think it's the Richmond and St. Joe's show again.
Alphabetical, go Big East next.
Yeah, let's do it. This is or actually I'll save that one for the end. That one's we'll do CAA.
Yep. Big time comeback season for Towson, arguably best season numerically since 2016, and obviously 2017 was that special Final Four run. So kind of a return to form for your Tigers. Jake, I think Nowlin's got his mojo back. I'm going to go Towson repeat. They're not even on Black's references, right? I'm not missing anything.
I think maybe it hasn't updated yet.
Losing a good amount, but the only other team I was kind of thinking is Delaware, and again, that's kind of more of a faith in DeLuca, kind of having a bounce back season. But gun to my head, yeah, I think Nad's back. I think the captain's back.
Yeah, last year felt like, it did have the feeling a bit of a, I would say, maybe, a kind of a, ships parting kind of, in the, the conference, not for good. I mean, Delaware's leaving, so, obviously, and I think the Blue Hens will be, back humming in the future, but a lot of key pieces, from these Delaware teams over the last, couple of years that have been very foundational to, DeLuca, and what he, what he's built, at with the program. are out the door. And so, he really has to kind of, remake the roster to a bit of a degree. And Towson, it's some key pieces. It certainly go out the door as well, but also a lot of key guys that were big on last year's team that got them, to the NCAA tournament for the first time in a long time. Return, for Delaware, J.P. Ward, Mike Robinson, the Accionis are exiting. And so, with Towson, you have, a good mix, I think. This was a team built on his offense. And you have, obviously, the loss of Nick DeMeo will be pretty tough. He was, the kind of the conductor, the guy at X, who took on the main responsibility with the offense, the main guy who had the lion's share of the touches. But Mikey Weishar is one of the most talented players that we've had at Towson a long time. Honestly, in some ways, offensively, maybe the most talented guy in Adelant's had at Towson. You got Villa Gomez back as well, and I talked about just a lot of speed on this this roster. I think they really found something, especially in that Syracuse game. Like, they were able to just attack them repeatedly with the amount of speed they had and the ability to just go at guys. I think that's something offensively that is a real weapon in in the game right now. Is how much can you exploit how can you exploit matchups, like in terms of like being able to win, be able to beat defenders. We always talk about beating defenders off the dodge and be able to draw slides. And look, defenders are better than ever. It was really tough. Long range, like if you can find guys just pure speed, like just athletes, that's it's a real weapon. And they were deep last year, like just quietly, like they got a lot of defensemen coming back on that side of the ball, who were just havoc guys make it happen. Joe Meadling, 34 ground balls, 15 caused turnovers. Connor Spagnuolo, 36 ground balls, 17 caused turnovers. Joe Petro, 40 ground balls, 19 caused turnovers. Elijah Smith, 28 ground balls, 12 caused turnovers. So, and they've, even with the loss of, DeMeo and Chop Gallagher, like they still have, 4 20-goal scorers going back. So, like it was a deep roster last year. So I like what they have returning with that group. They were a really strong team across the board in all areas. And I think, I look for that to continue. Obviously we talked, the schedule they're playing is pretty, is pretty rigorous. I think that's a sign, that Nadeland thinks he's got a team, that can compete and, is thinking towards May. So, yeah, I think towards the end of the year, it felt like they were, that Syracuse game, they were competing with Syracuse. I think, Syracuse is a better team. I think they would have pulled away in the end, but it felt like they kind of, they let go of the rope a little bit. And they made some errors, of a team inexperienced in May that I think could have certainly competed a little bit more, I would say. I think they let them, they let go of an opportunity. I want to say in that game. I think they had a shot to do more in that game, which was a little disappointing. But that's look, they hadn't been in the that was a team that hadn't been in the tournament in a minute, and so hopefully they can bounce back. With that, and look, you can never count out DeLuca, but I think Delaware does feel like a team, maybe a bit of a reset. Kind of similar with Towson, had a good, a lot. This has been a great run, but a lot of key pieces going out the door for that team. Safe, any dark horse? Any other
I do have one for the CAA. I'm going with Drexel, Jake, and this is why. We have seen, as you noted, the in-house elevation of an assistant has resulted in pretty, nice success. Maybe, it's not universal, but I'm thinking of Scudder at Lehigh, Busick at, Cornell.
Manhattan.
And Drexel's a kind of this weird team because, I really love Boyle. Won title for Hopkins 07. Yeah, I would have loved, I was happy when we got Crawley, but Boyle was somebody I was thinking of, when we were looking for offensive coordinators a couple.
Yeah, that's good offenses there.
And he's good, really good. Seems to be a really good student of the game. Produced some pretty nice offenses at Drexel. Maybe hadn't gotten the NCAA success, but they had that nice little run. Was it 2021, right?
Yeah.
Fear God in UVA that game. And I think the Drexel's a kind of school kind of like these A10 schools, in a geographically blessed area, Philly, literally the heart of Philly is right behind 30th Station. So, you have a lot of in-state talent. And if you could kind of put that together and maybe, catch Towson, I feel a little bit with Drexel. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe sometimes there's a resurgence, after Coach Steves has been there for a long time. It's had good amount of success. Volker did, but once there's a elevation from somebody who's already been in house and has the rapport, probably recruited a lot of these players. Obviously, he's the offensive coordinator for the team, so knows the offensive side really well. And as I said, if I'm looking for a dark horse, outside of our, I'm going to go with Drexel. I'm going to go with the Dragons.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder. Volker did a good, he had a good run there for quite a minute. Obviously, they had that win over Penn. I mean, we talked to the win, the Penn. Those are tough jobs. I think we had this conversation with Wilkes as well. You just kind of wonder where if you just kind of just get stuck, where just the ceiling just kind of weighs on you. You just wonder if maybe a new voice, just freshening things up, can maybe breathe new life into it. And they've got they got a lot of pieces coming back there. Connor Hooley was their leading scorer. He's a sophomore. They got a lot of talent coming back. Just solid goalie Drew McGill will be a senior. So it's a it's a roster that is familiar with Boyle, but that maybe also gets the advantage of kind of like a, younger coach, and, kind of younger, younger energy. And I do think there's, if you look at their, just year over year, the last couple years, I think, it looks like a program that had, kind of, like they still had some, decent results. Like, 2023, they were 8-6. But it looks like a program that had kind of hit a wall. I would say, like the 2021 team, like that, like they were 16th in offensive efficiency, 7th in defense. 2019 was last year before COVID. They were top 20 in offense, 13th in faceoff. 2020, like they had a really good run offensively there for a while. The last couple of years, it had kind of fallen off, but like the whole team had. Like, I mean, they hadn't been in the top 20 in any one area since 2021. But like before that, like, again, like offensively top 20, 2021, 2020, 7th in defense in 2021. 2019, 18th in offense, 13th in faceoffs. 2018, they kind of step back, but they were top 20 in defense, strong goaltending, top 10 defense in 2016. Like this was, a team that always, was able to produce, in some, kind of way or another, a strong, unit, here or there, strong, underlying it does, I think, kind of feel as if, I think the results got better a bit. I think maybe because the conference got easier. I think they were able to, that was kind of a little bit off. But yeah, just kind of, I think I'm kind of with you. I think there's room for improvement there. And again, I don't think that's anything about Volker as a coach. I think it's just, it's, just he's been there a long time. He's been coaching for a long time too. He's been a Penn a long time before that. And yeah, continuity. Maybe a chance to kind of, get after it. A little bit new voice, attack again, recruiting potential, good force. Maybe, you add Boyle in, you can add another, another person on staff who, if you can add another person on staff, that's a person with new ideas who, who hasn't been on staff, because Boyle's been there a while, and of course with Volker. So you have two people who have been there for a long time. Boyle can, and this, might be something that, maybe even more for like next year in the future, but you can add somebody in who, is external to the program, who can give, just a different, kind of voice. So, I think that's, a, team, potentially for, down the line, that is, maybe, I wouldn't be shocked to see, make some, I don't think it's going to be, a massive leap, but I wouldn't be, surprised to, see some improvements, there, by any means. I like that shout out. And then let's move it over to the Patriot. All right, we put a lot into talking about the Patriot League. What are we feeling with?
There's a hot take. I don't know if I'm ready to do it, but
I love hot takes. I love hot takes.
I may save it for the dark horse, but my favorite to win, I'm going to go with Army. decent amount returning. Maybe the bad taste of last year, the near Final Four miss, not Final Four miss, but Final Four miss of 2 years ago. I'm gonna go with the Black Knights. I feel maybe Alberici maybe taking a little bit of the mantle from Toomey as like the best coach right now in the conference. Just like, it's just such a tough place to recruit and keep players, and we kind of see, how demanding being a cadet is, like, the kind of tail off sometimes towards the end of the season. Just kind of really like what he's done, even with the loss of Nick Turn, they still had a really good year, and Nick Turn was a bona fide star. And maybe they found something in Army and they're able to like kind of maybe kind of be the premier. It was disappointing the way that they finished the year last year, not making the tournament. But at times, disappointment can kind of be fuel or motivation for the next season. So I'm gonna go with the Army.
I think I'm with you on that one. I think it's an interesting league because I think there's a couple teams you can kind of, sort of point to with this league in 2025. Ryan Pulley deserves all the credit in the world. BU is always sniffing around the top of this league. They were in the Patriot League championship in 2024. Even at kind of finishing third in the conference. They were second in the conference in 2023. They won the conference in 2022. You got to their first NCAA tournament. 2021 was, such kind of weird year. Even still, they came out with a 6-5 record. In 2019, they were 11-6, and they were tied for second. 2018, that was kind of like when they sort of like first broke out. But in 2019, this team lost the best recruit that they like. We never talk about that. We kind of mentioned it in passing, but this team lost a guy that had put up 111 points and was a transformational recruit for that program. He was the crown jewel for that that program. They won 11 games in 20. They won 12 games in 2017. But going into 2020 was Chris Gray. We'd won great season. That was the come up. And they lost him, and just didn't matter. So BU is always in the mix. They're always sniffing around there. I do think that they've probably taken just a bit too many hits from last year's team, like the law firm D'Alto Perfetto. Again, as I kind of said, shovels in the ground guys. No more Roy Meyer, Jake Cates. Thomas Niedringhaus was a great two-way player. That's tough. Kind of those two-way guys are really tough to replace. They do bring some back, in terms of goalie and faceoffs. That's solid. And defense, they're always usually able to remain pretty stout on the end of the field. I think they will be again. So I think BU will in the mix, but I don't know if they'll quite be able to get up, over the hump with what they lose on the offensive side of the ball. Navy was, there or thereabouts, but they're never, kind of, they're always, they're kind of sniffing, but they're not, it feels like, what's, kind of always, they're a factor, but never really in the hunt. And you lose our line leading scorer, kind of that big recruiting class that they had a couple years ago is out the door without much to show for it. So what do things look like now ahead of 2025 for Navy is I think a pretty interesting question. We're coming up on year, what is this now, 6 for Joe Amplo. I don't think we've heard anything about contract extension. 6 years is about the range of these contracts kind of run to. So that I think but it's that if it was going to be a year, it feels like last year with those guys as seniors, they're going to have to rebuild a certain amount of that a certain degree of that roster, with and also the both offensively, Jackson Bonds defensively out as well. They do have Dan Daly back in goal and they'll face off, so they can maybe ride on that. But I think Army feels like the safe. There's 3 teams I'm kind of circling here that I have my eye on in terms of as either factors, just teams to watch. I think Army is the favorite. They're the most talented team in the league. Like just player. Evan Plunkett is an All-American, first team All-American type guy. Jackson Eicher, they found kind of like the Nick Turn sort of the guy in that role in the offense. They kind of missing for a couple of years. You got in Pilot, they have their next shutdown number 1 defenseman. They have Coletti back at faceoff, so they're going to be super strong there. Goalie is one area, I think that's kind of fair. Sean Byrne took over for Matt Chess, kind of midway through the year, and did stabilize things for them rather. But I do think it's kind of fair, that Army, that was one area for them last year. We saw an Army defense that didn't have like elite goalie play. It was good. Started the year not great, like really struggling. Chess, he was below 50%, and then Burns stabilized things, gave it solid, but it wasn't like the really high, like All-American level of goalie play we're used to with Army. We had Knox Dent the year before, and was fantastic for them. You had Wyatt Shupler for many years, AJ Barreto. We saw Army with kind of just like solid goalie play, and it did seem to their defense, kind of took a bit of a hit for that. I think their shorties also were a little, kind of below with the Army levels. I think defensively is where you kind of look for that. Alberici might like they need to kind of tighten things up. It wasn't quite Army level defense that we've come to expect. It was good, but Army defensively you expect great. Defensively, that's always kind of overall. Though it's just they are the most well-rounded team in the conference. They have strong talent at every kind of area. And yeah, like I'm with you. Like I do think there will be a bit of a I don't know. Army seems to look. I think there is some they do seem to kind of struggle. Either is I don't know if it's struggling success or maybe just playing better when there's a chip on their shoulder. One of the two, but now they get a chip on their shoulder a little bit. Now they get to now they get something to kind of chase after. I think so I think in that regard they're good. The two teams I'm kind of eyeing otherwise. I think Lehigh is going to be a better team than last year. I think it's also entirely possible the record is worse because all those 1-goal games they played. But I think they're going to be a better team. I think, the job they did, stomaching the loss of, face-offs, with Sisselberger. Sorry, it took me 10 seconds to remember his name. I think it was really, understate just adjusting to that, and it's tough. They went, their defense actually improved, marginally, from 38th to 30th in defense efficiency. The offense took a step back, but they're defense took back. I think it was I think another year. I think they're going to be a and they return just a good amount. They return a lot of their offense. Offensively, they also it was a lot of new faces. I think they're going to be, and they return a lot of the defense figures. I think they're going to be a better team. I also wouldn't be surprised if just some of these 1-goal games go the other way. They could be tough, but I like Lehigh. What Lehigh's got going with Will Scudder, so I could see Lehigh being in the mix again. 100%. The last team that I'm watching in the Patriot League in 2025 is Colgate.
I was just going to the Raiders. And that was my dark horse. Absolutely. No, I'm with you. I'm on.
Go ahead, Sid. Go ahead, Sid.
I feel you. Bringing a lot back.
Yes.
And I always kind of think of a team is bringing a lot back, and I just always hang on my hat my bet on Penn State coming back the year after Grant was hurt, and I was they were 7-7 or something but there was 9 1-goal games, and they lost 6 of them or something. They were right on the cusp, and I'm hey, and they're gonna get this transformational player back in the lineup. I was oh yeah, I think Penn State's gonna have a bounce back season. And then, it was the rock and roll show that year. I don't know Colgate's gonna have that, but I'm looking at their season. I mean, back-to-back losses to BU with both of them by 1 goal. The Patriot League game was in triple overtime. Lehigh, who ended up winning the entire the Patriot League tournament, they lost that game by 2. That that was at home, probably a little disappointing. The Navy game, they lost that one by 1, probably a disappointing thing. But you look at some of the highs,
yes,
Penn State taking it to Army, who at that time, that's what kind of sunk Army's ship, was that loss to Colgate. I think really messed them up, and they bring in a ton of weapons back. I think they pretty much of their double-digit scores are only losing Michael Minikis from last year's team. I think they got a couple really good young players. I like Rory Connor. leading the team in points and coming back really balanced. 30 goals, 35 assists player. They got a banger, and Jack Turner coming back with his 40 goals. Like I like this Raiders team, and dark horse, like kind of like under the radar type thing. I was like, I'm gonna go with them.
No, I mean, we was talking about like what's the hardest thing? Like hard thing to do is like beat good teams. Like they beat Penn State. Now, granted, that game was like Penn State like threw the ball away mid-field. The commentator was like, "Oh, no. What's that like?" It's like that. Imagine now, like I could put that like the Maryland USC game. Like, oh no, disaster! What a bad idea!
Oh, yeah.
They beat Albany, who made the NCAA tournament. And they beat Army. They beat 2 NCAA tournament teams. They beat Army, who was, got to number 1 in the country. Like they beat good teams, this past year. Yeah, you mentioned Hunter Druin. I mean, is a freaking like hitter. I mean, he shoots the ball a ton. I mean, like
they
like
got 100 shot guys.
Yes. I mean, they got guys who shoot the heck, like who just are not afraid to shoot the ball.
Yeah, him and Jack Turner, 112 and 111 respectively.
Yes, they got guys who shoot the heck out of the ball. And yes, this is a team. They got guys on offense. They put offensively. They put the ball in the hands of They put the balls in the hands of their guys. They rely on like a couple of big time guys. The good news is they got those guys back, and they're piecing it around a couple of other guys. But yeah, like this is a team. I think certainly face-off is a question. They did not win face-offs last year. I think that's gonna be the the real question. Like, and I don't mean face-offs. I mean like I don't mean like they. I mean they didn't win face-offs. Like Kyle Romo was 41.5%. And Johnny Hartzell was 32%. Like that's like that's like season killing. I don't mean like it's we struggle to like we could like you win 32% of your faceoffs, like that sinks your season. They have to get better at that. Like you can't make a tournament with that. But yes, I think this is, if you're talking like dark horse, this is the literal definition of a dark horse. It's a team that went from winning 2 games to 8 and brings back basically its entire roster and picked off some big time wins. So yeah, I think Colgate absolutely is a team to watch for in 2025.
I love it.
All right, Safe. One more. Let's pick it off. The Big East. And this is one of our questions we asked from Drew Brennan at Drew Brennan 77. I think this kind of gets to the heart of the matter of the Big East. I think it fits with probably the question of who you have as a winner as well. If you had to put safe money, who would you put your money on being in the Final Four between Georgetown and Denver?
The heart wants what a heart wants, Jake. But I'm going to go Georgetown just because I think it's going to be, pretty hard for Denver to have that repeat success. And like, a lot of that was built, as you noted earlier in the show, like some big time early season wins. And me and Adam just go crazy just thinking about that Hopkins loss at the beginning of the season. And, I'm not saying that would have made or break Denver's season, but, that may have changed their playoff seeding and for both teams and stuff like that. So, and I just think, it's kind of funny, Denver first season, that's another one, elevating a coach after, they left. And then, Matt Brown turns around, gets them to the Final Four. Just getting back to that Drexel point I had about Stephen Boyle. So maybe Brown does have, the ear to the ground and, has a team going the right. I just think it's, hard to make back-to-back Final Fours. I mean, they didn't do it with Tierney, and that was, or did they make back-to-back Final Fours? No.
What's up? What do you mean?
I guess maybe they did in the early era part of Tierney's like.
Did Denver make Final Fours back-to-back with Tierney? Yeah, they did in
2013,
2014. Yeah,
the early part. Yeah, is it like towards the end? Then it kind of tailed off up to the
they made
national title season.
2011, 2013, 2014. They made 3 in a row. 2013, 2014, 2015. They made 5 in 7 years.
Yeah, that early peak Denver with Tierney. But Georgetown's got a harder thing because they just need to, getting over that hump. I'm going to go Georgetown. I think they're going to make it eventually with Warren, and maybe this is the season that they do it. It's a little bit of, as we keep talking about, teams taking some step back, and if they could just, I think last year was a surprising positive year. I kind of thought maybe 2023 was going to be the year, just, with the transfers. They had a valiant effort against UVA in the second round, but they fell short. But I think what Warren did, kind of revamping that team, despite not winning the Big East regular season, turning around and winning the tournament. I'm going to go with Warren and Georgetown.
If I had to pick this year, I would probably pick Georgetown. Last, from 2023, that Hoyas, they're the Pios team, and look, we'll get credit, that was one, the other people saw it ahead of time, we didn't. There was kind of a, sort of like, under the surface building, like Denver, being an NCAA tournament team, and it was 100% right. They brought back like their entire team. Who brought back, like, in terms of returning production, who was the number one team in 2024? Denver. They were number one, in the, they were, overall 97.9%. That's not the entire picture. I think we talk about the Hiram Metzbauer. I think really helped with the offense. We switched that over to this year, and they're 39%. It's a big shift. Offensively, they do still offensively. They still got pieces there. Mick Kelly, Malosky, has a bunch of talent. Like there's highlight reel plays that guy makes, so you can see the talent. Defensively is where certainly and that was the heartbeat of the team. They built their foundation on how strong they were. On that defense, on the defensive side of the ball. How many stops did they? I was there, at the Cuse game in the Final Four. That that game felt like it was hanging on a on a string for that entire fourth quarter, and they just kept coming up with stop after stop after stop. But you losing Mercurio and Jake Ettinger and Jack DiBenedetto and Hanglin. Just so many guys. Too big actually for you. But their best shorty, Dan Anderson, isn't with the team. So you lose just a lot of just big time pieces on the side, and your two leading scorers, still Sharp and Lampert. You do have offense guys coming back. And I think a big key for them is, and this can go either way. And I think to some degree, I think this decides if. I don't think they're going to make the final. I don't think they're a Final Four team either way. But to me, this decides if they're an NCAA tournament team, probably. And I talked about this. We talked about this a little bit on the last pod. Denver, if going back to 2015, that's pretty pivotal year for them. That was the year Trevor Baptiste showed up. That year, they won 67.6%. Adjusted face off, whichever. The next year they won 67.9%. The next year they won 74.8%. Year after that, 76.9%. Those 4 years, whichever, they won a national championship. They lost in the first round in 2016, but they were the number 2 seed. 2017, they went to the Final Four. 2018, they were a quarterfinal team. All right, 2019, Trevor leaves. The 2019 season, the main Fogo for the Pioneers was Brett Boos, who was a freshman that year. Brett Boos won 59.9% of his faceoffs. That year, Denver missed the NCAA tournament. 2020, obviously, shortened season. 2021, Alex Stathakis comes in as a freshman, and TD Erlin also flies in for the last, month or two of the season. They win 65.3% of their faceoffs. They lose in the first round. All right, 2022, Denver falls to 57.2% on faceoffs. That's the worst. The worst Denver has done on faceoffs in the last 10 seasons is 57.2%. The worst. The worst season Denver has had on faceoffs in the last 10 years is 57.2%. They missed the NCAA tournament. 2023, 61.7%. They missed the tournament. 2024, they went 61% and made the Final Four. All right. What's the gist I'm getting to here is the 2 years that Denver went below 60% on faceoffs, they missed the tournament. So this year, coming up, Alex Stathakis is out the door. Denver has one returning face-off man on this roster from last year's team. It's Braden Lair. He took 10 face-offs last year. That's it. So what happens, as far as, the face-off, predicament goes, if Denver wins 50% of their face-offs? This is literally something that Denver just hasn't had in over 10 years. And this is a really key component of how they've played for a long time. Their pace, we talk about it. Denver plays very slow. They did speed it up, last year. They changed, the components of, their offense. It did change to a a degree. They were, but still, they were 60th in 2024, as compared, in, it's compared to the Tierney era when they were, oftentimes 70th. They did push transition more, things like that. But and it obviously at the peak with Trevor, we talk a big part, their, entire, the way they operated was, just long possessions, just wait you out. you know, like how do they, you know, operate, you know, if they don't have the ball and they have to chase the game? Like this is just a, you know, and look, maybe, you know, the answer, you know, to this, you know, a question is that one of the face-off men on the roster for Denver just picks up where they have left off over the last, you know, 10 years, and they win, you know, 57, 58, 59, 60%. And it's business as usual. They've done a very good job. I mean, you know, look, Trevor was Trevor, though they did a very good job, you know, coaching him, certainly. But, you know, and obviously, I mean, Stathakis was a big time recruit as well, but they did a very good job coaching him. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's like one of the big questions, I think, for these, like, you know, they've had unbelievable, like, just, you know, almost unprecedented kind of like consistency across that position. It's like, yeah, like what if they just, you know, drop to 50%? You know, it's like, and paired with the defense they have to replace. You know, I think if they, you know, again, you know, I don't know if they made the Final Four the way, but I think if they suffer a significant drop off that position, I think it probably, you know, because it's, you know, it's been such a key luxury for them. You know, and look, I mean, Matt Brown's a great, you know, look, I mean, Adam kind of pointed out, he was saying, like, with what they lose, I mean, if they can just retool and make it back, right? But Matt Brown is, you know, I mean, he's the goods, you know, he's as good as anyone in the country. So, but yeah, that's what I'm looking at, you know, as far as Denver goes. So I mean, back to your original question. I mean, you know, long term between Georgetown and Denver, you know, I mean, go back that. You know, I'm honestly not sure. I think I might lean Georgetown's. I mean, Denver's got the, you know, pedigree. They've proven it. You know, I think I might have to lean there. If in this year I'm not feeling great about either of them, I might lean Georgetown, just because, you know, they've got. I think I lean towards them to make the tournament. Mm-hmm. But long term, I mean, Denver's got the proven track record.
All right. Touched everything right, or
did I pick a winner? I guess, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I picked. I'll pick George. I got Georgetown to win the, you know,
the favorite. Yeah, no, me too.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I just think they seem to find a way. You know, I mean, that consistency they have in terms of getting to the tournament. And in terms of, you know, if I have to pick, you know, when I look at what a team, you know, what a team carries over, if you got to give me, you know, a lot of, you know, if you got to give me a lot of depth or a bunch of, you know, core pieces at the key spots, I'll take, you know, I'll take my hitters. Mm. I think, you know, I can, especially with a program that recruits at Georgetown's level, these programs can backfill through the portal and through other areas. You know, they can backfill the depth. It's a lot harder to replace the big, you know, those key guys. Like Georgetown brings back Aiden Carroll, who was, I mean, such a, you know, their best offensive player. They bring back, I mean, you know, Ty Banks, who looks like he'll be, you know, he might be a, you know, first team All-American. They have, you know, hopefully James Ball, you know, full, you know, healthy for 2025. Anderson Moore in goal. They've got the, you know, pivot at the key spots they need. I think they can backfill it through the. But now, is it enough to be a Final Four team? I don't know. But I will take that over well, I got to replace my number one scorer, and I don't got my number one pole, and I don't know what I'm doing at goalie. But I got, like 5, 6, 7 starters all these, but like, yeah, like I'll, basically it's like, like with 22 Maryland, I learned my lesson with that one. It's like, well, I'm losing all my key pieces, but I got all these other guys here. Yeah. It's like, I got all these like 6 other guys here. No, I'll take the, give me the guys, give me the dudes. You need dudes.
Definitely. I mean, I think that's what I was trying to make the point where I mangled earlier. I was trying to say, like, post title win for Denver, even when they were having some pretty, formidable teams, 3 seasons in a row after the title with 13 wins. They only made that one Final Four in 2017 and really didn't have any replicate that success. From then on, they only really made that one tournament in 2021, as you noted, and that's kind of powered by that really powerful face-off. So if you're kind of losing Stauskas and kind of rebuild a lot, I agree with Adam. If Brown's able to replicate what he did last year, that's a real testament to the kind of coach he is and the long-term success potential for Denver. So I think maybe a little bit too much of a climb for them, and just Georgetown, just seems to have kind of a machine there in terms of like getting through the season and getting really prepared really for the Big East tournament. So yeah, I just don't really see them going to be able to replace everything and be able to take down Georgetown. And that's even assuming Georgetown doesn't get even better than they were last year, when last year was like kind of a surprise for people. So if they can take another leap, then I think it'd make it even more difficult for Denver. But don't really see a dark horse here for somewhat of a dark horse. I'd love to see maybe Bobby and Providence Big East tournament championship appearance. I mean, that'd be a really tall order. But if Denver does kind of slip a little bit, maybe Providence can do something this year. But other than them, I don't really see a dark horse out of there. If it's not going to be Georgetown, then Denver is probably in the best position. But they're not really dark horse. They were just in the Final Four last year. So.
In Providence, the offense is kind of, Bobby's shown like proof of concept of the offense. They've improved every year. They went from 46th to 40th his first year, and then up to now 29th in offensive efficiency. It's got to figure out everything else. Defense struggled. Face-offs really been a struggle. We know Bobby can coach offense. It's got to be everything else there. Marquette, new coach. I mean, internal. Again, our hire. Can there be, gets that kind of sort of bump we talked about? I guess the question would there be, that's potential. I mean, the counterpoint there would be it wasn't working really. I guess, with Marquette, we were kind of, maybe, I guess some folks are maybe thinking like they'd go outside, but it doesn't really look like there was the maybe money. Question to kind of do that. So, I thought Nova played really well. I thought in the Big East tournament, they were right there with them. I mean, they played. They beat Denver, obviously. And they played Georgetown right down to the wire. They their game plan, and how they executed it was really sharp. That offensively they've taken a hit. It's that the pipeline offensively there seemed to kind of run dry over the last kind of all the Fraccaros and I was kind of cursed and some of those other guys they haven't quite been able to really get the same talent. Patrick Daly offensively there over the last couple of years on the offensive side of the ball, but on the flip side, they've been able to put together good defense, and they have a ball come back defensively, and they do have some good pieces come back offensively as well. They do lose Justin Copeland defensively. I mean, Villanova's going to be there in the thereabouts. It looks again like a pretty good Villanova team, but it's a question of I mean, like, if it's going to be anybody else, it's going to be Villanova. Like, I mean, but it's is that going to happen? Like, it's they're not really a dark horse because it's like they project to be the team they usually are, and it's like, is that is
that enough?
Is that enough? Yeah, that's the question.
No, exactly.
Which, I mean, in a year where Denver loses, lose what they do, and maybe comes back in a year where Georgetown does have questions. It's open, it's more open than in the past essentially. I mean, Georgetown, does kind of come back with Georgetown hasn't backfilled through the portal as much. It's more open. I will say that. So maybe. I think the rosters look a little more favorable to Villanova than they have in the last couple of years. Doesn't mean I would pick them, but it looks a little more favorable to them. All right.
I think that's it for today.
All right. It was meaty.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to ACC, Big Ten, and Ivy one next week. It should be a lot of fun.
I think we get Ryan on with us for that one. Then we'll have our after that one we'll get our poll. Always good, top 20 poll. Always gets our predictions. Always season predictions. That always gets conversation rolling. So we're getting going. We're getting closer.
Can't wait, Jake.
Indeed. It was a lot of fun.
Stay warm out there.
All right. Stay warm. Get yourself a cup of hot chocolate, folks. Stay hydrated. And we will catch you next time. Bake lunch for president.
See you out there.